But ladies and gentlemen, our guest today needs little introduction, but it is our absolute pleasure to introduce you to the incredible Lindsey Metselaar, the creative force behind the immensely popular We Met at Acme podcast. Her genuine passion for helping others navigate the often perplexing path of love is nothing short of inspiring. With her innate ability to dive deep into the complexities of modern dating, relationships, and the ever-shifting landscape of love, Lindsey emerged and has stayed a guiding light in the dating realm. As a married woman, soon-to-be mom, and all-around remarkable individual, we are thrilled to dive into her wealth of knowledge today. Lindsey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. That was so sweet. That was like the nicest introduction I've ever gotten.
Hannah writes them, but can't speak them. I don't know why.
That's from my heart. Just know that.
I love that.
Very well.
Thank you.
You're welcome, darling.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, you are, for me, like the pinnacle of dating, especially being from New York. You and Tinks, those are like my icons.
Shout out to my girl Tink.
Yeah.
So being associated with you and having you here today is just amazing. So we're really excited about it.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So to start, for anybody that's been living under a rock, can you explain kind of like the inspiration behind We Met at Acme and how it all started?
Yeah, of course. So when I turned 27, I was dumped on my birthday by a horrible dude.
In New York.
In New York.
Okay.
Yeah. A horrible guy, as you can imagine. And before that, I really thought that I was, by the way, thank you for the Diet Cokes.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so happy.
They brought Diet Coke because they know it's my favorite. And before that, I really thought that I was like this guru when it came to dating. I thought I knew so much. My friends always came to me for like texting advice and all that kind of stuff. And I always had a boyfriend. I was like a serial monogamist. And so for me to get dumped on my birthday, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I just didn't see this coming at all.
Stings on another level.
It stings on another level. I really did. I mean, like in hindsight, it's always 2020. I could have seen it coming if I really wanted to.
How long was the relationship?
It was like 4 or 5 months. Like it wasn't.
I thought you were going to say years.
No. Okay. It wasn't anything crazy. But just the fact that I had landed myself in that situation after really thinking that, I got this, I was like, I know nothing about dating, and dating in New York sucks. And I'm about to have to like start from square one. I would love to talk about this because I feel like this isn't a conversation that people have. And this was 6 years ago now. There were really no dating podcasts at the time. It was like crime podcasts, and Serial was really big, if you remember it, and like news podcasts. But I didn't have anything that I needed to listen to when it came to dating. Like I needed a dating podcast.
A source of inspiration.
Right.
Advice, yeah.
Or just like to commiserate. And so I started recording. I recorded with a friend. The first episode is so bad. Don't ever listen to it.
And this is 6 years ago.
This is 6 years ago.
Wow.
And we just were talking shit about dating. We were naming names of the people we were dating at the time. That's how much we didn't think anyone was going to listen to it.
Wow.
And we ended up airing it, like putting it out there, and people actually listened. It was shocking.
On where?
So we did it, like this was so bootleg. I uploaded it to SoundCloud. At the time I was able—
days of SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like at the time I was able to take like an RSS feed from SoundCloud, which I still don't really understand any of the meanings of these things today. And I uploaded it, like I submitted it to iTunes, the podcast app, and I used one of those, like, what are those, like Shutterstock photos,
It's crazy. This is only 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, if you bring up YouTube or Spotify and even podcasting, it was like not a thing.
Totally.
And like now everybody has a podcast. Like we have a podcast.
Yeah, of course.
You're one of the pioneers, but it's crazy. Like that's just 6 years ago.
I know. It's insane. It's crazy. And that's the origin story, essentially.
How'd you come up with the name?
I was going out a lot in the city at the time, and Acme was like a hot spot. It still is, but it's a little younger now than I am. And I was meeting guys at Acme all the time. Like the only contenders—
Acme's late night.
Oh yeah. And the only contenders I would really meet were at Acme. And so I was like, We Met sounds like dating, and like at Acme, the spot that, has been forever in existence in New York, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. We Met at Acme. It just sounded like, I don't know, it rolled off the tongue. And then when I said it out loud, when like you feel weird, you're like, oh, this is it.
It settles in your body and your mind. You're like, I know it. It's like a light goes off in your head. And
So now,
it makes
did you
sense.
meet your current husband at Acme?
No, I didn't. But
That's what I
did.
That would have been amazing.
That would be amazing. I mean, I wish I could go back in time and meet him in Acme, but we did have our second, like our kind of like in between, when you're dating and you like kind of meet up one night out, but it's like you're still in the stages of like going on dates. Like we had one of those meetup outs at Acme one night, but no, we didn't meet at Acme, but I had met people at Acme, but no one like of
I
substance.
still feel like it kind of fits into that genre. Like if it's on the first or second date, so you can still say we met on the second date at Acme.
Yeah, exactly.
And New York's like a wild place because I would normally say meeting somebody at Acme who's going to be your husband is like the wrong place. But
Yeah.
New York, it's just like everywhere and anywhere you're going to meet somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, and-
So many people have met like at clubs or, places where they should be home sleeping.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you guys meet?
We met on Hinge.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the opening line?
So this is still up for debate, but I think we're kind of agreeing on it now that she liked me. And I looked at her profile and I was like, oh, wow. Like,
It's still up for debate because my memory doesn't go back that far.
Obviously dating profiles, it's just all pictures. So I was like, oh, wow, she's really beautiful. And I had a female roommate at the time and I was like, do we think she's real? And my roommate was like, no, she's not real. You're an idiot.
You're getting
and I was like, all right. So then while I was on Hinge, I was in the process of making first rounds on me. So I kind of used Hinge the way I wanted to make first rounds on me in the sense that I really like to get on a date right away. So like I would only talk to you if I knew we were going to go on a date. So she liked me and I said, listen, I really want to get off this platform. I don't really like chatting on here. And she was like, yeah, me too. And I was like, all right, when can I take you out? And she said tonight or Wednesday. And I said, okay, I'll see you
I was
tonight.
trying to test your spontaneity. I was like, all right, you seem like a spontaneous guy, but like how spontaneous are you? Do you want to meet in 4 hours or do you want to meet in 4 days?
Right.
And like that's how I was. So I said, okay, I'll see you tonight. And she said she was a vegan. And I was like, I didn't even know what that was at the time. And I was
Not
like,
a
okay.
vegan anymore, don't worry.
So I Googled a vegan spot. I said, all right, I'll meet you here at 8 o'clock. She said, great. And I was really excited, but I was also like, wow, the process and the way I thought dating should work seems to be working in front of my eyes. And then we met and she was real. And then we just had so much to talk about because we didn't spend a lot of time on the app and like our energy really matched. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. And
we were really like an accidental proof of concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
From the moment that we matched, the moment we went out, that was about 4 hours. And as you said, it's just like the amount of times I was on those apps and I'd be talking to somebody and they'd be like, so we should go have a drink. And I'm like,
it's
okay,
just
so
such a
when?
waste. Yeah.
Like, stop wasting my fucking time. I don't have time to be able to waste. Nobody does anymore.
No.
Especially when it comes to dating, especially because there's so many options out there.
Right.
So I felt I was already very intrigued with the fact that he's like, when can I take you out? I was like, that. He's got that there, waiting.
Wait, I have to ask, when are your birthdays?
13th of December and 1st of
You're a Sag?
Yeah.
And a Taurus?
Yeah.
Oh, that
Why?
happens a lot. Yeah.
Is that good or bad?
It's really good. Yeah. Like
is.
so many of my friends who are married are the woman is a Sag and the guy's a Taurus. I've actually seen the reverse too, but yeah.
I feel like we really balance each other out in a lot of ways.
Wait, do you have the same birthday as Taylor Swift?
I do.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
a big
One year
Swiftie.
apart.
I'm a huge
And he's a
Swiftie.
huge Swiftie.
Okay, that's
I love her.
That's like fate.
I know, seriously, right?
Mhm.
I know when I found that, I was like, I'm going to take that as a point of pride.
I
If only she
actually
was born in
see
1990.
similarities between you and Taylor for
Really?
sure. Yeah. Not like, I mean, just like from what I've gathered so far about your personality.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I take that as a high compliment.
How did you meet your husband?
So we actually like kind of ran in a similar, like very broad circle.
Yeah, that's the best.
It's the best, but we didn't know each other. So we knew of each other. He went to high school with one of my best friends from college.
Ooh.
And so I had like known of him. To be truthful, she had a huge crush on him.
Wow.
So I just never like thought about him like that, you know?
Because you're a good friend, yeah.
Because I'm a good friend. And like when we did meet in person, I was 20, we were 25. I had a boyfriend, you know, he was just coming out of a relationship. It was at like a mutual friend's birthday. I don't even remember meeting him. He just tells me that we met that night. And then we ran into each other 3 years later. I'm like so bad at math. Was it 3? It was 3 years later when we were 29, on New Year's Eve in Miami at this party do you know Soho House? Like
We were just at Soho.
Yeah, it was like a Soho Beach House, Miami
very
party.
nice.
It's a really fun New Year's party. I have to say, for anyone listening, like it's a reason to join Soho House in itself is to go to that party in Miami on New Year's. I always met someone there or like had an interesting experience there. And so I ran into Steven that night and he was like, oh, hey, like Steven, remember me? And I was like, yeah, of course. And I still was in a relationship with someone else, but that relationship had like passed the expiration date. So after running into Steven and like, you know, having also known that I was planning to break up with that person anyway, with love, like no bad blood, just like wasn't the perfect match. Exactly. And so I ended up breaking up with that partner of mine at the time. And then weeks later, I was like, let me text that guy, Steven, you know, there was something there. And
How was the conversation at Soho House? Was it you being respectful at your relationship? Were you like, I'm out of this?
Oh,
I'm gonna flirt
no.
with him a little
Only respectful.
Okay.
I truly like, and it's funny because there was like some rumor flying around that I was like cheating or like in a relationship when Steven and I started dating. I'm so loyal. Like yes, I'm a huge flirt. Like I'm a Libra, but I am so loyal. Like I would never do that. And so that night, however, I was standing next to my partner at the time and when Steven was having the conversation. So there was no shady business. Like we were all talking together. I would say that Steven was uncharacteristically drunk and saying some things that that he denied saying later on. For
was
sure.
there like an immediate spark? Do you feel something within you, or was it because of like keeping that loyalty and because your partner was there that you didn't really allow yourself to feel?
I think like if I'm being honest, I think that like there was, you know, I was in such a friendship relationship at the time, and like he would say the same thing. And we just like really were staying together because we really just loved each other as friends. And so like when Steven kind of came over and started talking, like I was like, oh my God, like I haven't like felt anything other than like friendship in a while. And so like, this is just like a reminder that there's people out there. And it was just like, it was like reigniting my like flame for
a romantic relationship,
a romantic connection. But
So then you guys started dating at like 30 or 29?
No, we still 29. I mean, that was, you know, that was right before 2020.
So that's, well, we met during 2020.
Yeah.
During pandemic love.
Really? Yeah. Well, that's another reason why you met up so quickly. Cause like, what are you going to do? Talk about the COVID for
Which many people on dating apps wanted to.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly right.
It was like a good thing and a bad thing. Cause like you said, like we met up and we had nothing else to do.
Right.
But once we were like hooking up and dating, because there was nothing else to do, we were on top of each other.
Right.
And you know, in a normal relationship, you kind of have a few months till you like know each other really and start fighting.
Totally.
And we were like in the thick of it, going stir crazy. And the fact that we got through that.
Right. It would have gone one of two ways.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it could push you apart or bring you together. And even though, like, I'm sure in some ways in the very like infant stages of it, it did kind of push us away a little bit. We learnt what we wanted and how we wanted it to be done. So that was always beneficial.
But we were talking to Alana yesterday about like the ideal age of, you know, when you should start getting serious and like living in New York. And it's funny that at 29, you kind of took that path as well, because I was saying living in the city when I was like 26, 27, 28, it was so difficult just because like New York it's so fun and it's like a big playground, and not that you want to be single, but it's hard to not be single unless it's something that really pulls you away from that. But then as you get closer to like 29 and 30, you're kind of over it and you're like, okay, I mean, I was like, I want to settle down because this is like just draining now. But did you have that, or because you were in a relationship before that as well?
Yeah, it's funny. When I turned 25, I was like, I need to date for marriage, which is so crazy because now I look back and I'm like, that was so like infantile. Like I was a child then. But I remember I turned 25 and I like looked at the guy I was dating at the time and I was like, I have to make this work. Like I can't go back out there. Like I'm 25. And
that's so old.
That's so delusional now. But I think after getting out of that relationship, I was like, oh wait, like I'm young. And I think even when I got out of a relationship at 29, I didn't feel like my time had passed because I live here. And it's funny, do you know the show Broad City?
I love that show.
It's so good.
So much.
It's
Me and my
so
best friend
good.
watch it and just like piss ourselves laughing.
It's so funny. And the main character's name is Alana as well. And she was talking to the person she was dating. I'm forgetting the characters' names, but he was like, I was thinking we would get married. And she's like, are you kidding? She's like, I'm 27. I'm not going to be a child bride. And like, it's just so funny because that's what we look at. Like when I see a 27-year-old get married in New York City, I'm like, oh my God.
It's wild.
Why? Like you're so young.
Yet for generations before us, that's old.
Well, I think
and so
exactly.
it's like mixing. It's trying to tread that line of like what we've learned from our parents and our grandparents, but then what we deal with in society nowadays.
I think it's the big city. That's why I love living in New York, because if you go back home, 27 is still pretty normal to get married. In New York, it's a child, but that's why I love living in New York, because no one felt pressure about age. Everybody was like truly themselves. And, you could be 35 single in New York and no one's going to be like, that's weird that you're 35 single in New York. It's like, no, I'm just in New York and there's people from all walks of life, all ages. And same thing with LA. Like I just love people who are from all over the place, and it's just kind of like a safe zone to just be who
bigger
you are.
metropolises innately kind of allow you to not have to operate within the confined box. But where I'm from in Brisbane, like small little town, very, very common. All of the people that I went to high school with had like 2.5 kids at 25 and they were married or they were on to their second marriage. And I could never fathom it because I'd always lived in bigger cities. I'd always traveled around the world. But it just shows you it's just really about what you surround yourself with.
That, and also I feel like in places like New York and LA, less LA, but more New York, it's just like people are building their businesses. People are building their careers. Like people want to feel like they have accomplished X, Y, and Z before, getting into that relationship. And sometimes, it can be an excuse when you don't really like the person. But for the most part, like people need that. I feel like especially guys like need that feeling of like, I'm at least doing what I love or on the path to what I love before, I'm rushing to settle down. I
said the same thing yesterday as well. And I don't know if it made sense because I kind of contradicted myself. And I was telling her, I was like, I think I contradicted myself big time on that. But to that point, if you take a 27-year-old guy and a 27-year-old woman in New York, I feel like that 27-year-old guy, he's not as mature as a 27-year-old woman, and he needs to validate himself and get where he needs to be in a career-wise to be his true self in a relationship. And I feel like, guys are like, okay, let me get to where I need to get in my career, have enough money to where I'm not only attractive, but comfortable enough to be my true self in a relationship. Because I feel like women know what they want sooner, are mature sooner. And that's just how I felt dating in New York.
Definitely. 100% agree with that.
All right, I want to go back to your podcast just for a little bit because I'm so interested about this. I was like going through a lot of your episodes. What do you think, like what topic have you found the most interesting as you've gone along out of all of the topics that you've talked about?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Honestly, I think it comes back to like, on my podcast, I talk about dating rules a lot. And I find it to be interesting what people will follow and will not follow when it comes to rules of dating. And I feel like it's starting to unanimously become everyone agrees no sex on the first date. Like everyone seems to agree.
If you want to be taken seriously.
No, like not even that. Forget that, because there's always that person that's like, but I had sex on the first date and we're married and we're so happy. Like it's more just like it ruins it for the excitement is dead. Like there's no buildup and tension and like, it's way hotter to like build that.
Oh yeah.
This is a great, that's fascinating that's the question, because this is great because we always talk about that. And I want to hear your perspective on it because she did not sleep with me on the first date. And it did build up two things. It built up the excitement, but it also made me think logically, like if she did sleep with me on the first date, I don't know if she does this on the norm and I don't feel as special, but But the fact that she didn't, and I knew that we really liked each other, I was like, oh, I'm really, really intrigued here for both reasons. But you had a unique perspective on that.
I always said that if I didn't see it going anywhere and I was horny, then I'd sleep
exactly.
the first day.
Exactly.
But if I saw something about to, like, if I really felt a connection, I knew that I didn't want to sleep with them on the first date just purely because it wasn't like, as you said, the build up to it so beautiful. It wasn't purely about the physical connection. There were so many different other facets of it. So that was always my.
But I love that mindset because that is a win-win for you. Meaning, like, if you're like, I don't feel a connection with him, I'm going to sleep with him on the first date. I just like, want to have a good time. Then he would still probably be obsessed with you because you're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So
and you're not giving off that energy.
It's truly a win-win. If a woman goes into it and she's like, I need to sleep with him on the first date because what if he loses interest in me if I don't? That is the worst thing you could possibly think.
You can feel that as a human being. You can really feel that.
And I agree as a man.
Exchange.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously men are stupid when it comes to like figuring it out and sex. But yeah, I feel like if you sleep with me on the first date, there's just too many unknowns. And if you don't, if I like you, I'm going to go out with you again. So like you guys are saying, that there's some intrigue there.
Right. There's no losing by not sleeping with them on the first date. And could he still not text you if you don't sleep with him on the first date? Of course.
Yeah.
And then that it's really not a connection.
And you'd be glad that you didn't sleep with him.
Exactly.
Because it's not a real connection.
Exactly.
I always felt like it was a win-win situation. I was like, either or I get mine. So I'm good to go.
Exactly.
I love that. Is there anything in like going forward with We at Acme, is there anything that you've been wanting to talk about or that you're excited to talk about in the future?
I definitely will have to like get into the subject of relationships post babies at some point because I'm not there yet. And I know that that's like a whole topic that people have experienced. And like I have a friend now who has like a 6-month-old. And her partner, the last time that they had sex was when they conceived this baby.
I always tell
the baby's born?
What?
The baby was born now?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
But and that's like I don't want to say that's normal because that wouldn't be normal maybe for me, but who's to say? Yeah. And she she's struggling with it and she wishes that people talked about that kind of stuff. And so I definitely want to talk about that, but it's tough because you want to stay like plugged into the people who are still dating. And I would say half my audience is single and half of them are in the same boat as me where like they're either married or pregnant or just had kids. And so I definitely want to like keep kind of balancing the line of making both groups feel heard.
That kind of answered my next question because I was so curious as I was doing research on you and then writing these questions. Both you and Joe are committed relationships. You're about to have a baby. Congratulations, darling.
Thank you.
But yet you appeal to a whole bunch of single people. Like how do you find that balance? Like how do you kind of figure to yourself, both of you, I suppose, at the same time?
I guess for you, it's like how do you and Steven communicate that and how do you personally go about doing it?
Yeah, well, for me, it's like whenever someone's like, you can't give dating advice anymore, you're married. And it's like, don't you want dating advice from someone who's married?
That's what we said.
Who reached the ultimate goal?
Right. What is your goal? If it's not to get married, that's fine. But if it is to get married, I imagine, part of that is like, that's why you're listening to my podcast. And like, if that's your goal, hi, here I am. Like, it's like what you shouldn't have a mentor that doesn't have what you want.
The blind leading the blind.
Yeah, I think
totally.
That's, I mean, not to say that I'm only glad I'm with Hannah because of the company of the app, but it does make it seem like, okay, I'm not this single guy who's just giving, because I don't give dating advice, but I'm not talking about dating just being like a douchebag. Like, no, I'm in a committed, loving married relationship and it worked. So like the way I approach dating as a guy clearly worked.
It's legitimized.
Right. I mean, I would respect a married man's dating app way more than a single guy who's like perpetually like using his own app to try to meet girls? Because you see that a lot in dating apps.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And I think we've had many conversations about the fact that like it would come off very skeezy if it were like you were just like this young, hot, bloody CEO of a dating app going out there and going to all of these events and being like, yeah, I'm single, because it just could cross the boundaries a lot.
Yeah, I mean, people just don't know who you really are because, you know, obviously I like to think if I was single or not, I'm still the same genuine guy, but the way you're perceived by other people is different.
Yeah. Totally.
But now how does Steven handle it with you?
He like just, how does he handle like which part of it? Because he's like not, you know, not like you guys, like he's not as involved. He doesn't.
What does he do?
He works in healthcare. So different.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in the sense of like, how do I put this? I have to deal with women a lot.
Right.
Right. Like it's easier to deal with like someone like you or Alana because you're married, she's engaged. So
right.
Like, you know, it's easier.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of single women who have dating podcasts.
Sure.
Obviously I'm communicating with them. I'm working with them.
Right. I see what you're saying.
So like in the beginning, it was tough for us because, you know, it was new and she's like, you're talking to all these women who were single and like talking about dating. And now it's way better because like our communication's so great.
Yeah, of course.
But it took time to get there.
Yeah.
So, like, does he have any issues or?
It's funny. Like there was one guest I had on in particular who was like a cute single guy, and we were DMing like leading up to the thing, and he would look over and he'd be like, I can't believe so-and-so is in your DMs right now. Like you are literally DMing with a guy that you've told me that you think is so hot so many times. He's like you're
all of
so
buttons.
Literally, he's like, you're so lucky that like I am so like confident in our relationship. Like, and that's really what it comes down to. Like, he's not worried, and he has no reason to be worried. No. And I'm never shady or hiding anything. You know, every now and then, like I'll make a joke and be like, oh, should I just DM so-and-so?
But now does it work the opposite way?
Meaning
what,
like,
him in what, healthcare?
Like if there was like this really beautiful doctor, and he was like, I'm just talking to so-and-so about work. Would you give him the benefit of the doubt as well?
You know, it's funny because I like, not to get to, you know, TMI, but I have like a little bit of a kink about that stuff. Okay. Like I think it's, if anything, I'm like attracted to when he talks to a hot doctor. Okay. You know, so
you just got a million more times interesting about it.
So it wouldn't, it certainly wouldn't piss me off.
Okay. That's so interesting.
But if there was something shady, like if he was, you know, with hiding communications with some sort of doctor or whatever, if he was like talking to his employee all the time, and I realized that she looked like a model, and you know they were talking off work hours and tax. Like, of course that would be sketchy, but no, I trust him so much, and I feel really lucky that we have such a strong foundation that both ways it would really be fine.
That's awesome.
But like, of course, you know, you never know.
Yeah, like for us, it took us, like she said, before we were together, she had a lot of trust issues with like guys who always cheat on her.
I cheated on in basically every relationship. So I was always like, when we got together, I was like, even though I love you, like I don't know if I completely trust you at the moment, because it's like I've had a track record of men just being absolute assholes. So you kind of got to prove to me that you're not in a lot of different ways before I completely give you that wholehearted trust.
You're really like, you're doing the whole Taylor Swift thing.
Oh, mate. The more that you talk about it, the more I'm like, we are incredibly similar.
You could sing too.
Yeah, not as well as her. Can't sell out stadiums like that.
But yeah, it's funny because like me, I'm confident enough in our relationship, and I've always just like not care. Like if you're with me, that's great. You're with me, unless there's like an absolute reason I have to be suspicious. Because she's dated like athletes and like actors, and I'm like, oh, like you should reach out to so and so and get him on the podcast. She's like, but I slept with him. I'm like, oh, I don't care, but it'll be good to have him on the podcast.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
But that's just like it's just that open line of communication and being able to trust your partner, isn't it?
Exactly.
Did you guys have that from the absolute get-go? Like you two that like very similar in that way?
I think so. Yeah, I would say like on our first date, we actually talked about our exes in depth and kind of like, because I had come out of that relationship that he had seen me in, and I don't shy away from those conversations on the first date. And I am such an open book with my podcast. Like, he could have just listened to it and found out all this information. But I felt like I wanted to even the playing field. I wanted to learn about him. And so I feel like we established that early on. Like, we got deeper quickly. And I'm just such a direct person, especially in my relationships. And he wasn't actually before me. Like, he was very much, oh, we don't need to talk about everything. Yeah. And I'm like,
men.
Oh, we do. We're going to talk about everything. I don't need to know your body count. I mean, unless like you want to tell me, but no, we're going to talk about everything.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think it's so much better to lay it out on the table. Like we were talking about this with Alana yesterday, but we were like, it was our third or fourth date, and I hate to like generalize, but being a typical male, he started to have very strong feelings, and he started to pull away, and I could feel it. And so he came over and I sat him down and said, what the fuck's the problem? What's going on? Why are you doing this? And what are you feeling? He's like, oh, just, I don't know. I'm like, do you actually feel that way? Or are you just scared? You're feeling a bit vulnerable right now, and it's like it's an uncomfortable feeling for you. And then I just kind of laid everything out on the table. I was like, listen, I like you. I can feel myself developing strong feelings for you, but I'm not walking down this path if I'm going to be yanked back and forth. Old enough and ugly enough to like not want to fucking deal with this shit for the rest of my life. And I think putting him on the spot, and probably Stephen the same, of being like, no, we're going to talk about this. We're going to have an open line of communication. It's either a sink or swim moment.
Well, I would say there's only one woman that a guy will do that for, and it will probably be his wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we don't want to talk about things that we don't want to talk about unless it's one of you two as our wives.
Right.
Like, this is it, buddy boy. And it's like,
right.
And that's why I pulled away. I was like, oh man, this might be it. I'm scared. I want to be single. I want to have fun. But if we do have that conversation, I guess that's my advice to any woman. If a guy is willing to lay it all out there with you, it's a good chance he really, really likes you.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that there are some guys that need that conversation more than others. Like, I think that you guys are matched so well. And I like, not to get too into astrology, but all of my friends in this similar situation, like the girl with the Taurus guy had to be like, all right, come on, like, let's go.
We're stubborn. That's
very stubborn and not as like open about feelings, at least early on. You know?
And I mean, not to generalize all men, but our emotional intelligence is nowhere near a woman's. So when I first met her, I knew nothing about women. I knew nothing about emotion. And it was an eye-opening. And now I'm like so in tune with it, where it's like, if something's bothering me or something's happening, I used to be like, not my problem, deal with it. You're just drama. Now it's like, let's figure it out because I care and love about you. And there's layers to everything. And you opened me up to that. So it's like just growth.
You're welcome.
It's really cute.
All right. So like jumping in, before meeting Stephen, did you use dating apps?
I did. I met the person I dated before Stephen on Hinge, actually.
Hinge, always coming into play.
I love Hinge.
We're very big advocates. I feel like that we always talk about the fact that there's room for every dating app on the market. Truly.
Totally.
There's so many niche ones. There's the big juggernauts like Hinge. What were your like peeves about dating apps?
I will
and you don't have to be biased or say the appropriate thing for our podcast. You could rip fresh rounds on me. You could be we don't care.
Well, I wish I had used it when I was single, but I wasn't a big Bumble fan because I don't like to initiate unless like it's my choice to initiate, but I don't like to only be able to. I don't want to be forced. I was into Hinge. The one thing that I know for sure is that I'm good at banter. Like, so I had fun with dating apps. I had so much fun with dating apps. And Hinge was great for that. And so I had prompts that were, always funny and joking. And it would lead me to having these really lighthearted, funny conversations like up front. And I always tell people, because I do dating app consultations with people. And I always tell them, the more lighthearted your profile is and funny, the better. Like the worst thing you could say is like, I'm looking for a guy who's funny, but you have nothing funny on your profile. Like that's the worst. And so just, leaning into that. And And I didn't really dislike dating apps. What I disliked was having to be like, we met on Hinge. I don't know why.
The stigma's still around it.
I just
Isn't it so bizarre.
So bizarre.
Like, even though they're so, I mean, even more so nowadays, so bloody prevalent. Like,
Yeah.
we started one. You know what I mean? They're everywhere, but yet there is still this stigma of, I still want that beautiful romanticized version of
I think it's fading away though.
I think it is minutely, but I think especially in a lot of women, I think men, again, generalizing, but like I think a lot of women still feel that way because it's this fairy tale thing that we're taught as we grow of like, this is how you should meet your partner. It should be this like magical, spontaneous moment that you just like bump into each other walking down the street and then you fall in love.
But that's the problem with like Hollywood movies.
Right. It's the rom-com effect. And somebody needs to make a rom-com where they meet on a dating app. And then
Let's do it.
like it would be, no, you should.
Honestly, that's
You
a really
should.
good idea.
Yeah.
Because then it would just start to change the perception. But I agree with you. Even when we first met, it wasn't, I definitely didn't feel it so heavily, but there were parts of me when people were like, when we first started dating, people were like, where'd you meet? And I was like, Hinge.
I forget.
Kind of.
And I think when you meet the right person, you just forget. Like I was saying yesterday, I forget that she's beautiful because like it's just like way deeper than that now. I forget how we met. I forget, a lot of things because our connection is the strongest thing. And if you meet the right person, I don't think it matters at all.
How could you forget that she's beautiful?
I always, it's so funny. Whenever we're pretty much at Soho House, there's so many Australians. So I'm just like, oh, you're Australian. And I'm like, why do I always get excited for an Australian? My wife is Australian. And I forget all the time.
Yeah, that's really funny.
You sit there and stare at somebody all the time. Like we'll be lying in bed and he's like, God, you're so beautiful. I was like, you just realized this? Like what's going on? It's like, I kind of just did. Like it just comes back into the mind.
That's so cute.
But it's also beautiful for me to be able to do that. So it's
But I wanted to ask you that you brought up Bumble because, doing this for a couple of years now, talking to a lot of women and like kind of when I got my data to come up with this concept from what women wanted and from what I wanted, I saw like a shift where when Bumble came out, I was like, this big feminist movement of like women lead the conversation. And now it's more of like what you said. I hear a lot of women being like, yeah, it's good, but I don't want that to be the way that I start dating somebody. And they're like turned off by Bumble now and are moving towards, I wouldn't say more chivalry or old school situations, but just more of like, yeah, I want to be treated equal to you, but I still want you to kind of be a modern, an old school chivalrous kind of person and take the lead a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, how do you feel that way about Bumble?
No, I do. I mean, I will say like, and going back to my dating rules that I have, I always think a woman can initiate at first, but then the guy has to take it from there. I think the problem with Bumble is that so many of the guys who use it are so lazy. They will literally just swipe yes on every girl. I've seen my guy friends do it just because they know that it's going to be an ego boost and the girl's going to say something. And sometimes they just really let her totally take the reins. And that's when I think it sucks. When like, if I were on Bumble and I, sent a wave or whatever, and then they were like, hey, I want to take you out, blah, blah, that'd be great.
Right.
But that just isn't always the case because I feel like you have more like leaning towards more of like a lazy, passive guy on Bumble sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It forces a woman in a way. I was watching something recently where it's like, if a man's not taking on a quote unquote masculine role, then we as women need to kind of take on that masculine role. And then we kind of lose a little bit of our femininity and the beautiful thing of that like masculinity and femininity kind of joining together. But if there is not that, like not sense of urgencies, but like
sense of want.
Sense of like, oh, do you like me enough to be able to go out and plan a date? Like it's not all up to me. Women already do a lot. We don't need to go and plan a date.
And like Lindsey said, lazy men just mass swipe.
The worst.
And just hope for any validation.
The worst.
Yeah.
Right, so you mentioned this quote, we live in a generation of suppressing, not expressing, which I thought was so bloody profound. Like it's so true. What do you think this is? And how do you think it impacts like the dating landscape today?
I think because it's cool to not care. And that's like become it's even more prevalent with Gen Z, I would say, than millennials. Like it's like whoever cares more loses. And I think, no, it definitely started with us, but that's like, it's cool to not care. And so let's just have a million, situationships and have like a million friends with benefits and whatever, because neither of us will admit that the other has feelings. And that's annoying. And so I think that's what we're working against. That's why 18-year-olds today don't have relationships. Like when I was 18, by the time I was 18, I had like 2 relationships already,
Yeah.
like boyfriends. And that just people don't define things because then it shows that they care about the other person. And so no one really likes to express how they feel. And also suppressing, I think when I had written that, I wrote it in terms of like talking about the hard conversations, like, dating and sex and all the things that people are like, oh no, we don't need to talk about that.
All incredibly surface level at the moment, like you said. And there's like this, playing hard to get's been around for bloody millennia, but I feel like it's really hit its stride within like this Gen Z or this new generation where like you said, it's cool not to care, which makes me really sad in a lot of different ways. I have a hot take.
It just came to my mind.
Oh, what is it?
What if?
Oh no.
What if like every person in their 20s had to be in a relationship, like college, where it's like you're going to be in a relationship with this person for 2 years. You're going to learn everything about them. You're going to learn sex. You're going to learn emotional intelligence. You're going to learn communication. After the 2 years, you could say like, oh, that was great. Not for me. Moving on. Or you keep it going. And it's like having that out at the 2 years where it's like, this is your 2-year person. You're going to get through all the thick of it with them. And then from there, you're an evolved human.
I think that's great. That would be amazing. But I don't know how we would do it, unfortunately.
I feel like it'd take people's free will away.
Yeah, like the Hunger Games a little bit. Like you are paired with District 8.
So how do you think, going forward, that the dating landscape is going to shift and evolve in the coming years, considering the fact that you are so knowledgeable about it all?
I think that we're going to have, I think the next generation is going to care again. I really have like this hope that they will. I just feel like we're getting more emotional men. We're getting more in touch with our feelings. So I think that, I'd hope that the next generation is one that really cares. I think also because it's like a generation that like we're raising. Mm-hmm. And so I'm having a boy and I am just thank you. And I just like need him to be like the ultimate good guy who like does all the right things, and I'd hope that other people who are in the same boat are doing the same thing. And so I think that, it has to do with nature and nurture and all the things, but I'd hope that we're getting to a place where people can care again and show that. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that is really interesting and a very interesting perspective considering the fact that you're growing life inside of you and you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to raise my son? How do I want him to be in society in general, but how do I want him to be in the dating realm as well?
Yeah.
I think that's cool too. Like when powerful women are having a boy, it's like such a unique perspective because it's like, you're a strong woman. You're like, you have your own company and you have a boy and it's just like, he gets to see his mom be super powerful. Badass. His dad obviously is super powerful. It's just unique. How do you handle it from a business standpoint? Because like, that's one thing I'm so fascinated about, like seeing women my age, having their own business for 6 years. And then I'm sure over 6 years, you thought about a family and kids. Now it's here. And is it easy? Is it extremely difficult? What's your advice for women who don't know whether to go down the business path or the family path?
I don't think you have to choose. I think that's what's so cool. I think especially if you have been successful in business, you have the luxury of having like a village to raise your kid. And so you can hire help and you can hopefully keep doing what you love. And I think a lot of women more today than ever are not fulfilled only from a family life and they love to work. And then there are some women who are totally fulfilled by family life and want to give up work or never liked work. And that's fine too. But I think that, for me, it was less the like emotional reasons why I wanted to have a child and more like what will be my legacy?
Yeah.
Why am I working so hard? Why am I doing all this stuff for what? And I feel like, I just can't imagine not having someone to tell like, oh, like mommy did this and like, you should do this. And I don't know. I just feel like, the choice to not have kids is, I totally respect it and understand it. But for me, that was not ever an option. Like ever.
Yeah, and I feel the same. Obviously, like I'm sure a woman's more attached to having kids than a man, but I would always think I wanted to have kids because I don't know why. I just always thought about what my life would look like when I'm 80 years old. And I was like, wait, if I want to be single my whole life, when I'm 80, who's going to be around me when I'm dying?
Yeah.
And that just gets really morbid. And again, that's just my personal preference, because if you don't want to have kids, it's totally fine. But I was like, oh, I want to have like a big family and like create a legacy.
Right.
But now how is it going? Like, how is it being pregnant, running a business?
It's going well, but I feel like talk to me once the baby's here, because that's when things really change. Right now, like nothing has really changed other than I have less motivation at this very moment to like really, do as much as I was doing before.
Because you're growing.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's a lot.
But nothing has really otherwise changed. And I don't know. I guess like I have to think more about like maternity leave and what to do post having a baby. But right now, nothing. I mean, I made this like very silly. So I never wanted to be like a mommy blogger. And I just feel like that's
that's right up your alley.
Such a slippery slope. And I don't want to change my content to only be about either being pregnant or having kids, because that's not my identity. My identity is, Lindsey Metselaar and an independent person. And, I have this dating podcast. And yeah, sure. Like, hopefully, I'll be a mom soon, but that's not my sole identity. Right. And so I created this Instagram like for like the baby stuff that like is just like literally on the side. So it's like, if you want that identity, you can follow this little Instagram about babies and stuff, but it's not going to be We Met at Acme. Like that's just not my vibe.
Well, that's one facet of you, and that's another facet of you.
Totally.
And like you said, the people that are following you have the option to be able to indulge and ingest whichever side of them they want. I think that what you were talking about earlier in terms of like, post-baby sex relationships. I was talking to my sister-in-law last night. I was telling her about you, and she was like, I very rarely hear anybody talk about sex during pregnancy, postpartum, all of these types of things. And she was like, I think it's fantastic that like that is like the train of thought, because like I said, I think there's very few people out in the world that are doing that. Yet there are so many women who are dealing with those exact thoughts or issues. So I think you're going to have a lot of guidance for them as they come.
I hope so.
You will. All right, we're going to go into rapid fire now. So it's just like
love that.
Short, quick answers.
Oh, wait, before we do rapid fire, I just want to ask you, have you ever been sponsored by We Met at Acme? Acme, sorry. By Acme.
I'm like, that's so meta.
With them?
I have worked with them before, but not sponsoring the podcast, because they don't need, to sponsor a podcast. Yeah. But I've thrown events there, a few times.
Nice.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I had that question.
yeah.
All right. If you could create one dating app feature that doesn't exist yet, what would it be and why?
Ooh.
I know it's hard.
That's so hard.
I know I'm really.
What did Erica say that one time?
Give me some inspo.
Yeah, I asked Erica that, did I?
I said something stupid about like your dating history, but she said,
I would bring back the mutual friends.
Oh, Hinge, right?
There you go. I like that.
100%.
Yeah, because I feel like even Alana was saying yesterday, she's like, she found somebody and then she was like trying to go through, all of her social medias to see if they were mutual friends. Okay, I like that. What's your favorite unconventional date idea that you think more people should try?
Something weird on a first date, like take me to an escape room or something.
Such a good idea. Look, escape rooms are amazing. I love them so much. If you could give yourself one piece of advice, your younger self, about dating relationships, what would it be?
If you're confused, they're not interested.
In your opinion, what's the most underrated quality or trait that people should prioritize when they're looking for a partner?
Ooh.
These are deep rapid fire
They don't
questions.
take themselves too seriously.
I like that a lot. What is your ultimate act of self-care or love?
This is just the Virgo in me, but like cleaning.
My section.
Yeah.
Makes you happy.
Yeah.
What inspires you most creatively?
My followers and listeners.
Love that. Dream podcast guest.
I've always said this. I don't know that it's changed. I mean, Howard Stern was like my number one for a while. I think Taylor Swift obviously would have to be.
If you get Taylor Swift, I would do anything.
You have no
to just
idea.
Watch.
You have no idea how many times my dad's like, why don't you just get Taylor on? Like,
But I feel like she has to have come across you at some
she's
point.
never done a podcast in her life.
Really? But I'm sure she has to know.
She has
You
come
are.
across me. I actually know that for a fact.
Yeah,
I'll tell you the story after.
She's a big New Yorker and you're in New York.
Listen, first time for everything. If she's going to do it. It has to be.
Oh my God, I would do anything.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Only take advice from someone who has what you want.
Ooh.
Favorite comfort food?
Chicken fingers.
One item on your bucket list?
I want to go to Japan.
Me too,
I've
so
been.
badly.
So
I can give some
badly.
recs.
Two more.
Jealous.
Favorite hobby or pastime outside of work? Can't say cleaning again.
I can't. I can't. Is tennis a hobby?
Yeah.
I like tennis.
There you go. And one thing you're grateful for today?
My safety.
Love that.
Wow.
Not to be dark.
And I have a question too. This is another thing because I had all these questions for you. So I consider you on my Mount Rushmore of dating advocates. I guess that's the right way to say it.
Sure.
Who do you think are like
My Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, who's your Mount Rushmore? So like it's like you and Tinks are like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. And then I don't know who the other two are yet. Who are yours?
Mine, one is Esther Perel. I never know if it's Perel or Perel. The Gottmans, like John Gottman. They're amazing.
Okay.
And I mean, I think she's still with us, Dr. Ruth. You probably don't.
I don't know who any of these people
familiar.
are.
She's like a 98-year-old woman who was like the first dating person. I also love Dan Savage. He's been in the game for a while. We have a great episode with him.
Okay.
If you want to check it out, you guys should listen like together on a drive because he talks about like non-monogamous relationships, but in a way that makes it digestible.
Okay.
Like you're not going to be mad. Yeah, so I think that's my Mount Rushmore. I'm trying to think if I forgot anyone, but
How was it working with Tinks?
oh, she's the best. Yeah, we're good friends.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she's awesome.
We have. Oh, I was going to say, I really love Katie and Kyle as well. From
my team?
your team.
Oh, yeah, they're the best.
So amazing.
They're so great.
We actually live right next door to. It's UTA, right?
Yeah.
We live right next door.
Wait, you live in LA?
Yeah, we live in Los Angeles.
we're like.
I had no idea.
Well, I'm from New York, and now we're like back and
We're
forth
trying
a
to be
lot.
bi-coastal. We're trying to move here next year, but it's just
You guys are very New York to me.
We're trying to come
such
back.
a compliment. I do not want to be in Los Angeles. But yeah, I've lived there for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then I was on my way out. I was packing up ready to go to Australia, and then I met him, and I was like, can't go anywhere now.
Yeah,
But New York is definitely the dream home base.
for sure.
But yeah, Kyle and Katie are awesome. But yeah, we like Tinks' team. She's so hard
She's tough.
to get in touch with.
I'll put in a good word for sure.
That'd be amazing. And we'll put in a good word for
Eyes
Taylor
lit
Swift.
up.
Yeah. You get me Taylor Swift. We have a deal.
We'll do an exchange. This has been so wonderful, honestly. Like
So
one of my favorite
great.
podcasts that we've ever done.
Thank you so
So
much.
easy to talk to.
Yeah, and obviously people know
Likewise.
where to find you. We met at
Yes,
Acme and-
wherever you listen to podcasts, we met at Acme. Check it out.
I'm going to listen to that. We're going to listen to that Dan Savage one on the way home. It's
Awesome.
Interesting.
Well, thank
You're
you
a
so
legend.
much, Lindsay.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.